woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. There ain't no harm in keeping your mind stayed on freedom. There ain't no harm in keeping your mind stayed on freedom. There ain't no harm in keeping your mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm singing and praying with my mind, yeah, stayed on freedom. I'm singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Yes, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Yeah, yeah.
Don't you be afraid.
Hey. Ooh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Ooh yeah, yeah, yeah. Preacher preaching in a broken voice, out the lonely noise. The sun is sinking 'cause it's got no choice. Just like my sinking heart. Ooh.
People watching through a veil of tears, singing we shall overcome our fears. He was barely even 40 years, but I can hear him talking, hear him saying loud and clear.
When they lay me down to rest, I won't go quietly. No. Sometimes the price of life
affection given no regard.
Blind with burning on the line and dark.
You try to open up the human heart.
Maybe a change is gonna come.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
30 years and people still preach hate. I can hear his voice clear as day. Close my eyes and I can hear him say, been to the mountaintop, I have found another way. When they lay me down to rest, I won't go quietly, no. Sometimes the price of life is death, but I will never leave, no. Remember me. If we could wash these tainted minds and hang our souls out on the line, we wouldn't be so afraid to die. When they lay me down to rest, I won't go quietly. No, 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 no. Sometimes the price of a life is death, but I will never sleep, no. Hey. Oh, hey. I will never sleep, no.
Never sleep, no.
When they lay me down to rest,
Don't you forget my dream.
when they lay me down to rest,
You'll remember.
when they lay me down to rest, yeah, 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 yeah. When they lay me down to rest, yeah.
When they lay me down.
When they lay me down to rest, yeah.
Don't forget it.
Yeah. When they lay me down to rest,
You'll remember, remember, remember me.
when they lay me down to rest, yeah.
Don't you forget it.
When they lay me down to rest, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Happy Monday and welcome to Perspective. This is our show and we are proud to be before you as always. And y'all, guess what? This is season four. Season four. 4 seasons we've been coming before you all, and I'm just excited to be coming before you again. So you know how we do. Go ahead and tag someone and share this podcast with someone that you think may really enjoy it, because we have a lot of great things that we're going to talk about tonight. And I'm just excited. So without further delay, let me go ahead and bring my guest in. You all know them, so I won't go through with any long introductions. Let's get our ladies in first. Jasmine, what's going on?
Hey, how are you tonight?
Good. Good to have you as always.
Glad to be here.
Our next guest, she's a returning guest. I don't even know how many shows we've done together. Isis, what's going on?
Hey, honey, how are you doing?
I'm good. Great to have you back on as always. And then our last guest, I know we publicized a total of four. I don't even call them guests, but Torez, y'all know Torez, he has a lot going on. So if he pops in, we'll bring him on. But if not, we'll carry on. And our last one, my brother What's going on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Brother JaPaul, wonderful queens on the line. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
I'm good.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead and get this show started. But before we proceed, we did want to go ahead and announce. I'm sure many of you have heard about it, but the passing of Dexter Scott King, who was the youngest son of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Coretta Scott King. And Dexter was also the King Center Board chairman and the president of the King estate. So he passed at the age of 62 after a violent battle with prostate cancer. So definitely our prayers go out to the entire King and Scott family. So before we start with our show tonight, and this one I'm throwing in on y'all, I did it on purpose because I know one, if not all of you are Bama fans. So I want to do an icebreaker, and we do want to salute the GOAT, Nick Saban, on 17 years. A great run, a great run. I'll get it out of the way. I'm not an Alabama fan, but I've always respected Coach Saban from day one. So on a great run. Now you've been knowing me longer than anybody on this thread. Don't play like you didn't know that. You know that. Anyway.
Still,
Um yeah.
I thought you had been delivered.
I know. I root for them. And they've had winning seasons. So but yeah, that's a conversation offline. But what I wanted to do for an icebreaker question, because I saw a lot of mixed reviews when this man announced he was retiring. Like he owed y'all like an explanation as to why he was doing it. Some of y'all even said, "Can you rethink your decision?" So for the icebreaker, I wanted to come up with this, and those who are watching, you can of course comment. I wanted to ask this simple question. So we'll start with our lovely queens, and then Tadera, you finish it out. So I want to ask the question: Is do you all feel that there should come a time in a person's career when they should step aside and say, "Hey, it's time for me to pass the torch. Let someone come after me, or they should die in that seat." Just curious to get y'all views. So, Isis, you start.
I mean, what more can Nick give y'all? I
Mhm.
mean, the level of championships and professionalism, I think the best part about this transition is the fact that Nick has left you in good shape. He's left the house intact. It's not like he came out of there and tore anything up on his way out. He's been an amazing coach. They have had an incredible run for at least the last decade that I know of. And so this man really deserved to actually be able to walk away at a time that's convenient for him. I will say it was definitely a little surprise. Sometimes, you're
Mhm.
scrolling down your timeline and something gets your attention. That definitely got my attention. I thought somebody was
Right.
playing with us, for a quick second. I wasn't quite sure how to feel. But he has definitely won the title of GOAT. He has
Mhm.
definitely earned the ability to walk away from this. I don't think anyone basically owes us. And as you were asking, the question is basically yes, I do think it is an obligation for anyone who is as much of a professional as Saban has been. I can't speak for every coach out there or every player. I would think that would be the standard, but I think in order to be able to actually have that mindset, you have to have something that you have to be able to give to somebody. And
Mhm.
the program has been incredible. Like I said before, he's left it intact. So I think he's fulfilling that right now and making room.
I am not necessarily a Bama fan. I don't really care one way or the other, but I do have a lot of respect for a program that he has run. And I believe in retiring while you have time to enjoy your retirement.
Right.
Like Nick Saban is up there in age. He's got grown kids. He's got a wife he's been married to. And people think that coaches see football season like just during that time period. That's a year round commitment where he's traveling and he's interacting. Funny side story. So I was a school counselor in Georgia. And I remember whenever Will Anderson was being recruited, he went to my school. And I was trying to figure out why these people who never came to my office were suddenly popping in my office because I didn't know who Nick Saban was, y'all. I'll be real with you. I'm a Georgia girl. I had no idea. And suddenly, like all these male teachers keep stopping by my office to ask a question. I'm like, who are you? What's going on here? And then it wasn't until after he left that I realized like who I was talking to. Like that was Nick Saban. But the thing is like that was not during season, so he's constantly traveling, constantly recruiting, and I think that he has earned his break. Go and spend time with your family and live your life while you're still young enough and healthy enough to enjoy the things you want to enjoy.
Right.
I think for those of us who are of college sports, particularly Alabama fans, when you are um, when you're dealing with love and loyalty, loss is always difficult. So you
Mhm.
feel like you lose somebody who has, for many of us, become a part of our family. But the issue with that is when you reach a certain status, when you've had the level of success, again, the professionalism, the standard that's been set, uh, people can have a tendency to see you as an opportunity and not an individual. So they feel like they own. The truth is, he is a human being. Um, when you feel the need to step aside and live your life and do your thing, not live under that pressure of having to always live up to that name all the time, I think you should just show the respect that he deserves for what he's done for that organization there, and just let him enjoy his life. At the end of the day, uh, as much as we enjoy the game, it's still a game. So we don't have to people and try to crucify them because they decided to leave. They just left the game. He didn't leave life.
Right.
So, uh, but I'm proud of it, and we'll keep saying Roll Tide for those of us who are Alabama fans. Uh, but I'm just a little hurt that my sister was in the presence of good old Saint Nick and didn't know it. I would have traded places with you to begin, but that's my whole spiel on it because I know we have a tendency to hold on to things and hold
Mhm.
so tightly until we feel like we own, and that's not the case at all.
And I agree with all of you. I just had a conversation with someone. I believe that you should go out on top, as I like to say. I always use this example. My
Mhm.
dad decided to retire after teaching for 25 years, and he was still very much a young man. He was 47 when he retired, but he's in a career now and he loves it. And he's still been able to travel, do some things that he's been able to enjoy. So I believe that you should go out on top and you shouldn't have to be forced out of anything because I think that's one of the most unrealistic states. And when you're forced, if you think about it, it kind of diminishes your legacy that you've worked so hard to build. So I would encourage everyone who's watching, if you're still working, if you're in good health, kudos to you. But if you in that age of 60 somewhere, I ain't gonna say what age because I know some of y'all feel like you Superman, Superwoman, but and I'm not trying to put anybody on a guilt trip. You deserve to go out in your best years, enjoy life, enjoy retirement, travel, do some things that you wanted to do. All that stuff. I'm gonna work till I die. Who said that? Who said that? That ain't biblical. And the person that said that, we gonna see if they work until they die. See, people will tell you stuff just to set you up to see what you're gonna say. But yeah, let's all make that decision because I've said it publicly. When I get 65, I'll probably be a mentor to actors, but I ain't. We ain't gonna be doing all these plays. Somebody else is gonna be hosting perspective because, and we should all be in a place where we can steer the next generation to come behind us. Because if we don't, our now generation, as I call them, they won't have a future. Just think about it. If mayors and presidents were allowed to sit in seats forever, thank God they're not. Uh, it would just be, I don't even want to think about it. So yeah, if you're watching this, and get out and enjoy life, and even when you retire, you still have power in you. Write books, there are other gifts that God gave you. He didn't intend for you to manage people 50 years and you having to be wheeled in and walking on canes and you can't hardly breathe and you can't talk. No, y'all, we got to do better. So that's our people on that. So our conversation tonight, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And for those of us who are avid readers or we followed Dr. King's life, this was actually his last book that he penned. And we'll be talking more about that in a few moments. But there was no way that we could even have this conversation tonight without even opening up talking about the amazing woman by his side for half of his life. They met in college, and you all know the story, and the rest is history. So there's a video that I wanted to show. I think it basically describes who she was, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about Mrs. King and the legacy that she built in honoring Dr. King.
Welcome back to GMA, and on this day where we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., taking a closer look at the woman by his side, Coretta Scott King. The new memoir, My Life, My Love, My Legacy, is based on recorded conversations Mrs. King had with Dr. Barbara Reynolds. And Robin recently sat down with King's youngest daughter, Bernice, to learn more about the First Lady of the Civil Rights Movement, who fought so long to have today recognized as a national holiday.
Today, we commemorate the vision, voice, and impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who advocated for racial justice and equality in America through his leadership and iconic words.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
A dream Dr. King shared with his wife, Coretta Scott King, who fought for 15 years to establish this day to honor her husband.
She was the architect of this King legacy. What we know of my father really came from her resilience, her determination.
In a newly released memoir and audio tapes, Mrs. King made it clear from the beginning of their marriage that she would be a force to be reckoned with. Listen closely to this exclusive recording as Mrs. King recalls a conversation she had with her husband.
I said, well, you know, I love being your wife and the mother of your children, but if that was all that I did, I would go crazy.
Your father wrote this about your mother. A wife can either make or break a husband. My wife was always stronger than I was through the struggle. In the darkest moments, she always brought the light of hope. Was that your mom?
Mm-hmm. In those crises moments, in those very difficult, challenging times, she rose to an occasion. And she could carry you. She could carry many people.
Well, I believe that Martin was chosen. I believe that I was chosen. Mm-hmm. And I say to the kids, this family was chosen as well.
As heard right there, Mrs. King divinely believed in their purpose as leaders of the civil rights movement. She thought she was as destined as him.
Exactly.
To do good things, great things.
Yes.
And not because she was his wife.
And I honestly believe in a different kind of way she did greater things, probably because she lived longer, but also because she had the insight to see who he really was and articulate it in a way that an entire world could embrace.
Out of the spotlight, Coretta and Martin were like any other young couple. But Mrs. King had one simple wish.
I told him every woman wants a house. That's all I need is a house. As long as I have my own house, I'm fine.
And your father was like, no, because he didn't want people to think that he was benefiting from the movement. And your mom was like, I want a house. And she got that. So it tells you a little bit about her tenacity.
Yes, definitely. She had a lot of tenacity. And most times she got what she wanted.
That tenacity and strength put to the test in 1956 when their home was bombed.
Think about this. Daddy was the leader, but Mother was the one who first experienced the manifestation of a threat. She was in the home when it was bombed, not him.
And her baby girl.
And the baby girl. It's like God designed it this way because she had to first come to a resolve that I'm willing to risk the loss of my own life before even him.
While Mrs. King is known for her lifelong dedication to her husband and the movement, her first love was music. She aspired to be a classical singer.
When we grew up throughout the house, every morning. Me. She would
did
come
that?
down the hall.
Wow.
Yeah, so music always lived with her. It was an important part of her life. She made sure that she raised us with an appreciation of music.
Any regrets that she gave up her dream and your father was able to pursue what is called the dream?
Her sister said to her, you know, you won't have your career as you see it, but you will have your career in another way. Perhaps the greater way were those freedom concerts.
Mrs. King made it her mission to hold what she called freedom concerts, where she sang to raise awareness and funds for civil rights groups.
Just because I've been born again.
What do you think they're looking for? Here at the King Center in Atlanta, Dr. Bernice King discussed her hope for maintaining her parents' legacy of peace and understanding. How do we use what your mother and father fought so hard for to move forward?
I'm gonna use his quote and her quote. His quote is, people hate each other because they fear each other. And they fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they are not communicating. They don't communicate because they're not connected. My mother said, struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. She would help us to understand that we are all been called to this freedom struggle in the world. In these times, we have to be unrelenting in ensuring that certain freedoms are not lost and that we continue to forge forth in winning other freedoms.
Just amazing. That's all I can say. Amazing. So, Isis, when you think of Miss King's legacy, what are some things that you come to mind? Even jewels that you may have picked up just from watching the video.
Well, I always tend to think that the next generation has a lot to learn from the previous one. I always like to take certain lessons away from that era, and especially Coretta. You can see that her name is how you say used a lot today to kind of describe a certain type of woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we use it in jest, you know, watching the John and his situation that went down. But I mean, even more so, you still have a lot of men who want that type of woman in the aspect of, you know, your backbone, the woman that was going to stand by you no matter what, take care of the house and the children, and actually lend to the fight and the struggle. And you know, if you go back to Proverbs 31 woman, she's it. I mean, as far as we understood it to be, and I think that that's something that we can put in front of ourselves as older women, but that's also to be able to present to younger women that it's not just because it was a certain time, it's just the overall ethic and the character of a woman that really stands in her power and knows who she is. And I think that that was something else that was developed during that time, and why Coretta and Martin kind of linked the way they did. I think it was interesting when it was said that he felt like she was stronger to a certain degree. And I can see where that might actually be the case through the course of her being subjected to the negativity initially in the sense of the house bombing and things of that nature. And also the fact that um, she had to bear a lot more in the sense of he could go out there and speak, but she still had to be at home taking care of his children and still. I'm not, Coretta wasn't at home just, just taking care of the kids. I mean, I'm quite sure she was helping out with the actual day-to-day operations of the dream. So, you work on being able to see yourself through that lens and wanting to be better because of women like her. So I'm totally impressed and always happy to be able to see her and see her story in action.
All right, Jasmine, what you got?
I was lucky enough to get to hear Dr. Bernice King speak, and it was kind of a casual conversation was the setup. And to hear her talk about her mother, it just, I guess, increased my respect for her even more, because she is known as the wife who, held it down and who stayed home and who took care of everything. But what I wasn't aware of is that they met because she was also a civil rights advocate.
Mhm.
That's how they were introduced and they were connected. And she talks about how her mom was so much more, and how she willingly kind of took a back seat as far as, the name goes, but she worked equally as hard, and that she was present for marches, and she was the organizer, and she, brought everybody together, and she did so much more while maintaining a household and a family. She does things that I can't fathom. Like, I am single with no children, and I be tired. Like, listen to Bernice talk about her mom and what she did. I was just literally in awe at what she's able and was able to accomplish during her lifetime. And then her ability to persevere after her husband's death, and to continue, standing up and, putting forth that message and that image. And she was a phenomenal woman.
Hey, Jasmine, I keep on believing that women during that time were just built different. Not necessarily better, but they were built different. And
Yes.
but but still just amazing. And that's what you definitely want to follow after.
Yeah, I think Mrs. King just was it's a total package. Just with such beauty, such grace, class, intellect, integrity. Uh, the thing that I like about them collectively is not just that they were African American, not just that they were black and qualified. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? They had the grace, um, and he, um, I think, I think for just the gravity of that time, their situation, um, their relationship, I think you determine purpose should determine your person. Like what your purpose is a cue regarding who you should select to be the person that's connected to you. Like what are you doing, and then who fits that? And the quality of woman you have will determine the quality of your future. I say that to men all the time. I say that to husbands all the time. And she was necessary. It was almost like she had to be the one for such a time as the time in which they lived, and the pursuit, and she just held it down, and was able to do it. You always saw a look of peace about her, despite the things that they went through that we probably don't even know, just even in hearing the clip, just learning a couple of things, but probably so much more to the story. But you couldn't tell by watching her just the amount of strength that she had to use in order to have the season, and then even thereafter. Um, I just think that was the quintessential woman, and as you guys are on this line as well, let me play that. I think for that segment
Please
in
don't.
history, I think she was it. She was it.
I agree, and I think one thing we don't typically talk about, when Dr. and Mrs. King got married, they really went through a lot as a young couple, because not only was he, like, for those of y'all who know the story, he was handpicked like at the age of 27 to be the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association. And not only did he have that role, but he was just installed as pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. So you're talking about a young pastor, a young first lady. They had the movement. He was doing typical stuff like preaching men's days. She was speaking at women's days. So it was just a lot. And one of the things that I've always admired about him was he was secure in his space to let her go out and build her own name. And it never was a thing, because she respected her husband and he respected her as his wife. So I know some of y'all say, why you say that? But think about it. You'll get it later. And then one final thing, I've always admired this about Mrs. King, Mrs. Murley, Evers Williams, and Mrs. Betty Shabazz. When their husbands were all assassinated, they could have went home, raised their children, and been regular people, and it would have been nobody's business. But they all rose to occasions in their own right, in their own ways to fight to keep their husband legacies alive. I mean, how many women do you know actually on the same day that your husband is eulogized and buried in front of the world with your black suit on and your black hat, you go out and join sanitation workers to march for better rights? Go ahead, Isis.
But I think that speaks to, again, how they were committed to the cause first and foremost. I mean, of course, your loved one, your husband, but they all had a stake in this.
Right,
What we're experiencing right now is in pale in comparison to what these people went through in the sense of actually asking and demanding for freedom.
right,
So it wasn't like the fight was over as soon as her husband passed away. There were too many people who needed her to be able to stand in that chasm that she was in.
right.
And to have that strength speaks a lot to who she is and who these women were, and what was going on at that time.
And then if you all go and research her, there are several videos where she talks about her family growing up. Coretta was a little tough when growing up. There's even a video as a child she talks about where she got a branch because this boy was bullying her brother. She got a branch and she actually hit the guy upside the head several times as a little girl. And she said she knew she was going to get in trouble, but she said nobody was going to defend her brother but her. So that goes to show you already before she met Dr. King, the type of woman that she was. So it's powerful. And this is a great segue to get into our conversation for the evening. Again, if you're just joining us, thanks for joining us. Tonight's topic is, where do we go from here, chaos or community? As I stated earlier, this was the last book that Dr. King wrote. However, it didn't come out until 10 years after he passed. And for those who follow his works, this book was different because he actually wrote this book almost a year to the date that he passed. And he and Mrs. King were vacationing in the Caribbean. They had rented a house in Jamaica. There was no telephone in the house. He didn't want any interruptions or disturbances. He was isolated from everything. They were told not to contact him about anything about the movement, no speaking engagements or anything. He worked on this book. And when I was reading the book, and there's no way that we could highlight everything because this would probably turn into like a month-long series. But a lot of the things that he highlights in the book are things that we're dealing with today. And I do want to touch on those tonight. Some of these things are the need for better jobs, better wages, decent housing, and quality education. And the great thing about this book is that he presented a universal message of hope that I think we can still use it and it can resonate today, where he wanted to see an end to global suffering. And if you go back and read all of his books, even those who study his speeches, that was what he gave his life. He wanted to see global suffering end. And so what we're gonna do, it was very difficult, I'm not gonna lie. I went through the book to just pinpoint out a few quotes that stood out to me. And what I'll do is I'll post a quote and then I'll allow each of you to, in your own way, kind of speak to how these are some of the same things. And then we'll tackle just a few of these subject lines before we end the show. So this is the one I want to end with. Probably should have. This is the one I want to start with. I probably should have ended with it, but it's a great one. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Justice is at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. Y'all think about it. That's powerful within itself, and we can definitely use some of these things today as we're strategizing, trying to get people energized and excited about voting, trying to end this senseless violence. just trying to come together as a nation and realize that we're closer than we realize to the American dream that he spoke about. So, Isis, I see your wheels turning. What you got?
Well, I'm kind of just going through that phrase again, or that those two sentences, and I think the one that stands out to me the most is the last one: that justice at its best is love, correcting everything that stands against love. Um, I've been trying to figure out through the course of the last couple months, Jasmine and Tidra, I think you can kind of speak to this as well. I don't know if you've experienced this, where you have to get to a point in this whole momentum or idea, especially going into this next election, especially the current state of where we are as a community, as a neighborhood, as Black African Americans. You got to figure out which side you're on. Are we part of the solution? Or are we part of the problem? And the question that's been coming up in my head is kind of like how to approach these conversations. Because again, it's like we have gotten so far away from the village that it's hard for a lot of us to have honest conversations. Not so much that we want people to be under a rule of things, but how do we get to a normal that really does help instead of hinder? And when you think about just at its best as love, correcting everything that stands against love, it's being able to actually have those conversations in love. I've never had anyone that I know of be able to actually end the argument or a fight by fighting more.
Mhm.
Someone has to acquiesce. Someone has to sit here and take not so much the lesser position. And I think that's also a testament to Dr. King's legacy, was the fact that, think about it. He went to college when he was 15, graduated when he was 19, was a pastor, went to seminary, so he actually studied the tenets of Gandhi as well. So that love component was being able to, to take that slap, to actually turn the other cheek. And we are so bent on negativity and toxicity these days. It's like, well, I'm gonna put a brick up somebody's head. And I'm kind of like, that's not really helping the conversation or the cause. So again, when I read that second sentence, it's like we have to kind of approach it in the love component. It's something that I don't think a lot of people get. But if I love you, I want to help you see things clearly and have a better outcome from your actions. And I have to do that in the tenet of love, as opposed to telling you that you ain't about nothing. Like, you kind of have to approach it differently. So that's kind of where I am with my walk right now.
So that's a great question. I want to ask all of you this, and all of you will have a chance to talk on this subject. But I like how you presented that, Isis. So let me ask you all this: do all of us collectively believe that if the approach of people were different when trying to correct things in society today, we could see a different outcome?
Most definitely. I think that in general, if you are in a position to correct anyone about anything, you automatically assume a position of knowing better. And I think that that is important for us to progress. However, you have to be capable of the delivery. And I think that's kind of what Isis was pointing to. Because if I come at you and I tell you how wrong you are and how ignorant your behavior is, or I call you any kind of name, or I just start like listing all the things, you've tuned me out. You are hearing absolutely nothing that I'm saying. Like whenever I have couples in therapy, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to a conversation, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a stranger, whether in my situation, an educator to a student, ISIS, somebody you meet on the streets that has questions, Tadera as a pastor. We all have so many interactions and we have the ability to influence, and our delivery matters. If you have the words to say, you have to take that second to think about your delivery, your word choice, your tone, um, fix your face. That's my thing. I tell students all the time, it has been my struggle for life. I have grown as an individual, but my face can usually tell you exactly what I'm thinking and exactly how I'm feeling. And so I have to check myself whenever it comes to a teachable moment to ensure that my face is not indicative of any kind of superiority or anything like that. Because if we're going to teach, we've got to be able to sit down on equal playing field, and you've got to be able to give credit that somebody's thoughts, somebody's actions, their perspectives, those are rooted in some kind of experience, whether it is first person or secondhand words and knowledge. Everybody's beliefs are rooted in something that they have heard or something that they've experienced. And I think that we have to give credit to that before we can, move forward.
Yeah, I think the spirit of love is what you get out of those quotes. And the question is, in or out of what spirit do you do what you do? Because I think love out of order is hate. Some people love to correct, and that's out of order. It's better to correct in love. You never correct in the spirit of confrontation, but you confront in the spirit of correction. It's about where it comes from that matters the most. And I think that people are more willing to receive even constructive criticism if they know that um, you're performing heart surgery. You can have a cut from top to bottom um, in the name of performing a surgery, but then somebody can stab somebody with a small pinpoint and take their life. Some people cut to kill, some people cut to heal. And I think that sometimes we have a tendency to disguise um, murdering people's spirits and their emotions. Well, I said it, well, it's the truth. Well, did you have to be brutally honest? Like, does your honesty have to bring about brutality? So I think it's definitely how we approach people in this generation, not again from a position of superiority because we all fall short, but and I think that we have to prepare ourselves. I think that's why we have to have those conversations with ourselves. I think all of us know what it is to have a hard conversation. And so before you call them, you're practicing how you're going to say it, what points you're going to want to bring out. And you're telling yourself, okay, remain calm while you do this. Try not to get frustrated or, become knocked off your square. So I think that's an excellent quote. That he placed there and did everything in love. And I think that's really what moves with God. It's the goodness of God that leads us to repentance. It's not the anger and the wrath, although there's a place for righteous indignation. But it's His goodness that leads us to repentance. I don't see people changing for ultimate good because somebody was angry with them. When a person is brought into reflection, change can happen more easily because of the way in which it was done. And so I think that was powerful. I'm glad you brought that one out tonight, JaPaul.
And I've seen some of the meanest and cruelest people talking about adults. I'm going to make this example about youth. When a person goes to them in love, they'll say, most of the time, they'll say, because some of these people, I'm just going to say it, they don't know any better. And some people you can't tell anything to. And if that's that person, don't lose sleep trying to correct something that's not correctable. I'm just being honest. That's just how some people are. You love them, you pray for them. Sometimes you have to love people from a distance. Know the difference. But there are some people when you go to them in love, they'll say, you know what? I was wrong. I knew I was wrong when I was doing it. But then you got some that'll say, and
Mhm. Yeah.
so, like y'all said, it's just the delivery. And with youth will tell you the reason why they don't want to hear anything from a lot of adults because it's their approach. When you go to a youth and you yelling at them, what I tell you about doing that? Most of the time they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. And if you catch a good one, they're gonna go toe to toe with you. And Are they wrong for going toe to toe with you? Absolutely. But you came at them the wrong way. So yeah, you got to think about that. And I hope that adults that are watching, if you deal with kids, if you're a teacher, if you teach Sunday school, if you're a mentor, any of that stuff, if you have wronged in some areas with youth, be man or woman enough to admit, you know what, I could have handled that entire situation very differently because we all have the chance to make a situation better than from it turning into a chaotic situation. All right, let's do this one. Freedom is not won by a passive acceptance of suffering. Freedom is won by a struggle against suffering. By this measure, Negroes have not yet paid the full price for freedom, and whites have not yet faced the full cost of justice. And for those who are wondering why you say Negroes, that's how it's quoted in the book. So, and when I read this one, is very true. I think that some of us think that we could do just enough, and we say, "I've contributed to society. We're free." No, nobody's free until everybody's free. So, as long as you still have people talking about voter suppression, unequal rights, y'all, let me let y'all in on a secret. Did y'all know that telling a woman what she can or can't do with her body, that's not an equal right? Did y'all know that? So yeah, when as long as we're dealing with things like that as a nation, we're not free. We have a long way to go. So as long as, and here's something else I want to say: as long as you're silent about these issues, you're just as big of a part of the problem as people that are passing these laws and they know they're not right. No, I'm not saying call into these radio stations screaming, yelling, because most of the time, if you call into one in particular, I'm gonna say it because I'm thinking it. If you call into the think tank, Chris gonna hang up in your face. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. So yeah, but there are other ways to get your point across. You know, start having these uncomfortable conversations with your family members, with your girlfriends, with your boys. These are conversations that we have to have. Even those of us that have teenage children, nieces and nephews, these are conversations that we have to have. This is the way, this is the start of how things can change. So, what you got, Isis?
Um, Again, it's kind of like the sentence that stands out. By this measure, Negroes have not yet paid the full price for freedom. If that wasn't a slap back into reality, real quick. Um, and I think it's amazing to me how these words still ring true right now. And that's something that you mentioned at the beginning of the show about the book. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And that we're still kind of going back and forth and still having this conversation and still trying to find a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a weird feeling in some regards, but it also kind of lends itself to the possibilities of people actually doing something. I have to admit, and I think I've done on this show a couple of times before, that I'm a bit of a Garveyist. So it becomes a point of I'll get on social media and we see the comments, injustices everywhere, but you just have people just going off in the comments, and that's fine. I believe that letting off some steam and being able to express your opinion, freedom of speech is still a thing. But I also realize that I'm one of them folks that I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes to complain. Then I want a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know what it is that you're basically going to do to actually change this up. Do you know who your local constituents are? While you over here worried about a presidential election, do you know who the people who are affecting your taxes and your way of living right now? So when I see my folks, majoring in minors and how we get excited about certain things, and then of course, when you look about society and the educational system right now, the teaching of civics, I knew a little bit, Okay, but now it's just kind of like, folks will just kind of go off and say things in the comments. You're kind of like, I can tell who and who not who didn't have that course or that class. Jasmine, you feel me? It's
Oh,
like
they didn't pay attention. They slept through that one.
and it's painful that you have to actually just go back and teach the basics. But if you're in the educational system, you understand that's what these teachers are dealing with every day. Whether it be, affluent children or children who are in challenging areas. And I think that's the part that, again, that why it resounds so much with me with that sentence of by any measure, Negroes have not paid the full price for freedom yet. We kind of take it for granted to a certain extent, thinking that, of course, if we go along with this and we profit from it monetarily, that it won't come back and bite us in the ass later on. That's the frustration I have right now, because like you have no context. Even I don't have a context. We were on the latter side of that whole movement, 71 when I was born. So, by that time they're kind of coming out of it, still, holding on to some of the premises they had before, but we didn't get it halfway as much as the 60s and the 40s and the 30s. And there's a whole other generation that's still kind of passing off, but they have that mindset where these children, think about how many kids you know of right now, especially those born in the year 2000 or after, or even a little bit before, have no concept of the internet not ever being there.
Right.
So the way that we look at things is different. And so I think it's an uphill battle in some regards, and not realizing that any point in time, as much as it doesn't seem like, there's always checks and balances that keep us from not having to sit here and have freedom. I'm like, but are there really? So you kind of look at things a little bit more, well, how do I say this? From the point of freedom is won by a struggle against suffering. If that's something that you want to sit here and get over, you have to put in the work. You have to sit here, and that's why I always take it back to the village aspect of things. And we have to be able to own our own things and basically put those pieces back in the pocket. Not saying that you can't have this with the rest of the world, but it seems like we are always kind of pinpointed of not being able to do this, not having that. Then, okay, then why aren't we fighting for those things? If those are the things that help us create jobs for people who are in certain areas and doing certain things. But I can go down this rabbit hole all day. Point being, again, is just at some point in time, you have to decide which fight you're going to fight. You're going to be a part of the solution. You're going to be a part of the problem. And even like I was telling you earlier, well, like Page Pals, I'm starting with something small, 30 minutes each week reading the kids. Okay. It doesn't sound like a big thing, but to me, it's huge in the sense of I love reading. So it's like, pick your lane. You ain't got to sit here and read kids. You ain't got to sit here and contribute money. If you just show up, for an hour a week and volunteer at the local rec center, whatever it is, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that. But pick where you're going to sit here and help the struggle. If not, get out the way and stop complaining and shut up.
Because my interpretation and piggybacking off of what you're saying is, I think that what he's referring to is in not paying the full price for freedom or the full cost of justice is through love. Because I think that his message was so big on unity, and that's within the community first, and then allow that to spread and permeate to the world. He wanted to see a society in which we could all come together and we could all be one on one accord. He was the one, I'm looking forward to the day that little Black girls and little white girls can, sit down and hold hands and can play together and can enjoy each other's presence. And I think that what he is implying here is that it is so much about this or that. And it is the fact that it is more of an aggressive take, where, as we said, with the educational factor, you've got to be able to come forward in a tone of love. You've got to be able to find a middle ground. And, sometimes those tensions are so high that middle ground doesn't seem feasible, but that's when you have to dig deeper, because until we get to a point where we're able to, accept that, like you said, we all fall short. Things have happened. We all know history. We all know what has happened. But until we can all come to the table, acknowledge history is real. This is what happened. But this is, like Isis said, how we're going to move forward. And we've got to be willing to extend that olive branch and put forward, and wrap our arms around each other. And, it's going to be some grief. There will need to be some healing. But I think that until we reach a point where we're willing to teach and we're willing to come together, like I said, first as a community and then spread out, beyond that, I think we're going to end up in the same place we're currently in.
So, um, that's so much to unpack. Uh, the preacher in me started like trying to dissect all of that. I'm looking at it like it's verses, um, but um, the opening statement of freedom not being won by passive acceptance of suffering. What that speaks to me, the volume that it speaks is. There's another quote by Zora Hurston. Uh, if you are silent about your pain, your enemies will destroy you and say that you enjoyed it. And
Mhm.
so I think that that passive acceptance of suffering is it speaks to what people refer to the fight or flight. When you're in a difficult situation, either you will fight to get out of it or you will try to flee it. And I think that that passive acceptance of suffering is just trying to cope with it as best as we possibly can, not fighting it, not resisting it, but embracing it. And if I just go ahead and embrace it, then I can feel comfortable in this beautiful bondage. Oxymoron there, because I don't think there's anything beautiful about it. But it speaks to how I think there's a difference between contentment and complete. Contentment is that thing that I accept it when I can't help my current situation, but complacency says, yeah, I can do better, but
Mhm.
I don't feel like fighting. It looks like too much hard work, and in certain regards, we have some of us who just accept things that are there, um, and don't really put in the work. Unfortunately, we were born into a situation, many of our forefathers were born into a situation where they had to even have this fight. Um, but okay, perhaps not our fault, but it is our fight. And Negroes not yet paying that full price speaks to how sometimes we really do nothing about it. We'll just go along to get along, and as long as I can just experience a little bit of peace or a little bit of joy here, I'll be okay. But that full price, we've not really resisted unto blood in this generation, which is why I do think it's important that we are reminded of the struggle, that we are reminded of, or brought to the knowledge what's really going on, things that are right before our eyes that we don't see. Your hands can't hit what your eyes don't see. Sometimes
Mhm.
people are bound and don't really know how bound they really are. Uh, and that time takes its toll, and we become accustomed, and okay, it's just the way that things are. Um, but that freedom being won by struggling against the suffering, that did it for me, because you won't get it just because you want it. You'll get it intentionally. You have to fight. You got to want the smoke, and go and take it. Like whatever presents itself, life is not going to be easy for us. Um, but if there is a way to survive, shoot for that one. Shoot for that. And the final part about whites have not yet faced the full cost of justice. Um, and I could be off in my interpretation of it, but what I think that he's um, trying to say regarding that is, while we are paying a price to be free, there's not really been a price that has been paid for keeping us in bondage. I think there is still some, um, I guess, the idea of always having the privilege that has existed, is still, there's not been a price paid for the injustice that was really brought against so many of us. I could be wrong in that interpretation, but I feel strongly about that, or at least it's how I feel about it.
I love it. Fannie Lou Hamer said something that's It resonated back then, but it really resonates today. Nobody's free until everybody's free. And so when you really love a person, I believe you're not gonna breathe your last breath until you've done everything that you can to make sure that the generation coming up behind you doesn't have to fight through some of the same things your generation had to fight through.
That part.
Mhm.
So I think everybody watching tonight, and I'm sure the three of you would agree, we all can do better at something, no matter how old you are, to make sure that the generation coming behind you doesn't have to go through some of the things you went through. Everybody can do something. No, you won't. Everybody won't be behind a mic like this and popular to what you think. Y'all didn't send all this cut up to be, because sometimes with some of these issues that's going on in the world, some of these guests that I have will tell you we've been texting like, okay, how we gonna talk about this? How we gonna talk about this without getting kicked off YouTube and Facebook? But it's an honor to come before you weekly, because guess what? Some of the same events that you all have, we have. Some of the same concerns that you all have, we have. And so let's make a commitment tonight that we're all going to do something. Number one, to get closer to the dream that we all are, because together we can do so much more. But when we are apart, that's the chaotic part that we really don't like to talk about. And I heard someone say something I kind of didn't agree with it, that chaos was a different kind of uniting. I'm like, no, because chaos is what it is. It's chaos. It's cricket. It ain't together. It's all over the place. Let's call it what it is. See, and then we got to stop sugarcoating stuff. I'm serious. If something is out of whack, say it's out of whack. If something is jacked up, say it's jacked up. If it ain't together, say it's together. But then let's all be adults to come to the table and talk about solutions. Because it's easy to talk about the bad all day, but let's come up with a solution of how we're going to make it better.
That
And that's
part.
just it. So in the last, we have about 15 minutes spot on. So what I want to do is we talked. I said in the book he mentions better jobs, higher wages, decent housing, and quality education. So I'm gonna flip flop it this time. Tadera, let's start with you, and then we'll end with ISIS. I want
All
you
of
to.
water.
Uh,
I'll,
y'all said it best. I'm gonna disrupt the order. So that's what we're gonna do with that.
nah,
Yeah. So pick one of those four and say it how it really speaks to you. And we ain't no political people, but our voice matters. That I do know. Let's talk about a way how we really can work collectively to put an end to this. Because y'all, guess what? We can talk about the third graders not being at their reading level. We can fuss about them holding them babies back. But guess what? At the end of the day, that's law. You can go up there and cuss that child's teacher out. If your child read like in May, they stand in the third grade. So what you can do is read with your child. And if you work and make sure someone in the home is putting in time with that child, we got to start putting our energy on the right stuff. Because guess what? Going up to the school, cussing at that teacher because your child ain't did nothing, they still gonna get an F. Ask my daddy. He flunked so many,
not daddy.
they still gonna get an F.
Oh, Father God.
It is what it is.
So, give me those four again. Better
Okay.
housing, better
Better,
wages,
better jobs and quality education.
better jobs, quality education.
Mhm.
Yeah. So um, in each one of those categories, and let me say this, I do think from the time that was written to where we are currently, we have to say that some progress has been made.
A lot.
I you know, I benefit
Hmm.
from what individuals like Dr. King represented and stood for. Um, so at this point, I believe that now it's about the application, applying ourselves to those things which are actually possible at this critical juncture in our history. Like it is possible to be smart. It is possible to live in a nice neighborhood. It is possible to make some money. It, it's possible. My focus in all of this is more so the application of the individual, the the pressure on the household to not depend totally on the school system. I'll teach my kids math as well. When we're at home, I'm challenging their minds, even during the summer. Daddy ain't in school. You always keep your mind working. Like you don't get to take a break, from thinking, So that's the part that does it most for me, and the understanding that it's all attainable. Because how many of us have come from what we call the other side of the tracks and have gone and living where we want to live, how we want to live, driving what we want to drive. It's like you can have a decent credit score. Like it is not impossible to do it. And when we think that stereotype is a reality, sometimes we have a tendency to lean in the direction of it. This is what my life is going to be, or this is the most that I can make. And I'm saying this because I talk to a lot of people and I hear the mentality that,
Self-prophecy.
yeah, that kind of stuff. And that's what we got to get beyond. Now, if there are barriers beyond the application and you just got people in certain positions that don't like you because of your color and all of that, okay, that's another conversation. But I should not be able to achieve all of those things because of my inadequacy or my areas of insufficiency that I did not apply myself to be qualified to be in that conversation or to be in that place. Then, it's I can't put that on other people, because if I say that, then I'm saying none of the struggle worked, none of the marching helped, when we know that that's not the case. So that's my biggest concern with all of it. Whether okay, better job, but we've seen so many black entrepreneurs over the past couple of years, and people who have created financial literacy, like not spending more than I make. You know what I'm saying? Living within my means. Instead of buying Jordans to impress people, let's put that in an insurance policy. You know what I'm saying? Like leaving some wealth behind for our kids. Like we have to make some decisions for ourselves, and I think it starts with that more than anything else. Because if we don't, we'll always be looking for somebody else to be our hero rather than the gifts that God has given to us and the abilities that we have. You have all that the greatest of men have had. And whatever you don't have, you can still make it without it. One of the greatest pictures ever painted was painted by somebody who don't even have hands. So we just have to know that the possibility for us to achieve and do well is there, and flow in that vein. And then whatever we run into later, okay, we can deal with that at that point. But
Mhm.
don't let it be because we didn't do our part. That's my issue.
So this is my soapbox. How Isis, you were talking about earlier, you can go in, I can go in. So when I start talking to you, y'all just tell me to shut up. Uh,
Come off the ledge, girl. Come on. Come on off the ledge. Come on off that ledge.
I'm trying to give it an abbreviated version. Honestly, we have to shift the mindset of the community in general. We are overpowered by conspicuous consumption, is the term for what you're describing, Tadera, where we see it, we buy it because we're more concerned with impressing somebody right now than thinking about the long term. A lot of that stems from the fact that within our communities, especially low income Black communities, a lot of times future isn't guaranteed,
Mm,
unfortunately. And the
that's
stereotype of, not gonna make it means that I have to embrace today and I gotta, blow that money today. I gotta get these shoes, I gotta get these rims, I gotta get this new video game so everybody can see it now so I can enjoy it for the moment. And until we get to a point where we can shift that mindset as a community to move forward, and make people truly appreciate, what's going on. Um, like for the future and the opportunities that are there. So they're, like you said, they are there. But unfortunately, we have so many people, like even to this day, it is 2024, and there are people who are from small towns who have never left their town. They don't know any better. They haven't seen anything else. And so they have so many limitations in what they see as feasible and as a potential opportunity that they can't move forward to take it. And I think that a big issue is that, and I'm guilty myself. And so, because I have acknowledged my problem, I'm trying to do something about it. Once I got out of my hometown is one of those towns, it's an old mill town. People end up in prison or dead if you don't get out for the most part. We have a lot of older community, and there are definitely some families there, but it is an impoverished community. You have the haves, you have the have nots. And so, most people graduate and leave. But what is that leaving for our posterity? And so, me being willing to acknowledge that, I try to go back now. Like I've done some seminars for parents and just helping them to understand the way that we talk to each other. As we talk about, being able to have a conversation, understanding those emotions, understanding that, genetic trauma and dealing with that and how that manifests in our actions and our decisions. And we got to get to the root. And I don't even know where or how to start getting to the root outside of, touching those people who I'm close enough to touch. I think that's part of my calling and my pull for education because, I get to interact with so many young people and I get to look them in their face and say, I know that you've never been told that you can do this, but you can, and here's how. Because luckily I was blessed to be put in a position to do that. I am first generation college student, and I had to have people who had been there to look back at me and say, hey, you got something and you can do this, and here is how you do it. But I think that we become so closed minded as a society. We are so, I got mine, now you got to go get
Mm-hmm.
yours, as opposed to, I got mine, let me show you how.
yes.
And so I think that that's going to be a big thing. It's just exposure, education, and that is the first step to shifting the mindset. And until that mindset is changed, we're not going to appreciate it. We're not going to appreciate education as long as, being intellectual, as long as traveling, as long as living in a nice house is considered white. I think that it's not going to be acceptable and it's not palatable. And we've got to be able to have real conversations about potential and what you can do with yourself.
That's beautiful.
I think Jasmine hit the word that I was looking for, that I use a lot, and it's exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I start to do more research, as I start to kind of like experience a little bit more with families and the community and the neighborhood, my father used to always basically say that again, it's like if you don't know it's there, you don't know to go after it. And that's what I feel like a lot of us kind of suffer from. It's just we feel like with a a glass ceiling on ourselves some days. And I don't think it was any different back then. I was amazed to find out in the course of studying about Dr. King that this man, when he went to seminary, got a C in public speaking,
Yep.
one of the best orators of our time. So it always kind of comes back to the point of there's nothing that you can accomplish if you don't put your if you actually put your mind to it. And whatever it is that people and they label you or put names on you for, it doesn't have to be your final resting place and aspects. So I'm always kind of amazed that again we just don't speak life a little bit more into our to others, and I try that desperately. Jasmine, I'm the same way. It's like, what at this point, how do I kind of look at this? I can only do what I can do. I can't, not so much I can't, but it's just, I just don't think it's my calling in certain places. And as you said before, Tadera, that again, I think it's all purposed as well. That's just my mindset. I don't know how it is with everybody else, but I do think that within the lines of what it is you're supposed to be doing also lies your purpose and what God basically has you here for, to be able to help in some form, fashion, shape, or way. We're all servants. Now, how far you want to take that is up to you. Not saying to be, taken advantage of, because I was going back and forth with one of my friends. She was kind of like, "Is this people just out here using each other?" And I'm like, "Well, here's the thing: we're supposed to. There's not a tool or an action on this earth that isn't being utilized or used in some kind of foreign way that gets us to where we need to go. Now, the point is to not misuse one another.
Right.
And, the misuse of something is to take it out of its purpose. So therefore, you have to get to a point where, again, you have to remind folks, regardless of their theology or anything else like that, that again, their presence means something. Because it seems like, and Jasmine, you can speak to this, that most people have more issues because they feel like they're not, like they're just here like they're here by osmosis, and that they don't really have a purpose, and that their life doesn't matter, that people don't care about them. So these turn into other psychosis that turn into their ability or their inability to basically to be able to see themselves and to actually see other people correctly as well. So when you come at them with the whole concept of, let's get together, of course, the past traumas as well as their inability to see themselves correctly is going to keep them from doing that on a large scale and even on a personal scale.
Yeah.
So with the way again that I'm kind of looking at things moving forward, it's just, what is God calling me to do? What does He ask me to actually help with? And, am I insightful to the Holy Spirit when they ask me to actually stop down and do something for somebody that I might not have done before? To be able to have that heart to go, okay, all right, let me go ahead and just chuck off this page real quick, or help these folks move it, or help build this, whatever the case may be. But to take that time and whatever you put into it, think that you actually get back. Again, with Dr. King, um, education was really important, as you can see. The man went to he got there and skipped, was it ninth and 11th grade?
Mm-hmm.
Was actually able to to succeed, and but that was a different mindset during that time as well. But I think that that's something that we kind of look towards and are able to actually share with our students today, is that again, that's something that no one can take away from you. I knew my father used to tell me that on a consistent basis. It was like education is the one thing that they can't take out of your head. They can strip you of your house, your car, and all these other different possessions, but the information and the wisdom that you obtain through all this, as through all this learning, no one can take away from you.
Right.
So I kind of live off of that, and I try to share that mindset, and realizing that the more information that you gain, the way that you're able to actually disseminate it and consume it, and be able to actually disseminate it is important. And I think the more information that we basically give folks, and it's pure, it's true, it's intentional, I think it'll benefit everybody at the end.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the close of another great show. I think this is a perfect way to start season 4 and get ready. We will have more of these. Sometimes these are uncomfortable conversations with some people. But of course, we don't do this for Black History Month, but on perspective, we go extra dope for Black History Month. So look for more of these types of conversations in February. And also get ready next Monday. We will be back here. And y'all remember that the official shows start at 7:15. I know when we did the special edition shows, we were 7, but our regular show started at 7:15. And our guest next Monday will be Mrs. Angela Abdul Rashid. She's the author of, this is her 7th book. We'll be talking about White the Vision, Sister and Mister. It's a vision self-help book. And we'll also be talking about the power of forgiveness. So for those of you who've always said, forgiveness is hard, I can't do that, y'all tune in next week, because we're not going to go into 2024 bitter, because bitterness makes you mean. Some of y'all, it's time for you to change some ways. And as we end tonight, before we end, I got to put up a correction. I like to be corrected. So the GOAT, Mr. Vines, has said he never failed a student, but some did not prepare to pass to not prepare to pass his class. Okay.
Like it.
That.
Yeah.
Well, if you one of his students and you fail, that's why you fail.
Keep
Yeah.
it 100. That's all I'm saying. Keep it
Yeah.
100.
They failed.
Yep.
He didn't fail them.
Right.
Exactly.
You earned that F, baby. You know you
Yeah.
Right.
earned that.
And as we close tonight, I want you to think about something. Never get to a place, no matter how old you are, where you feel like you're too old to change. As long as we all have breath in our body, we all can make a change. You just have to be willing to change and admit, I need to make some changes. So y'all marinate on that, and we will see you back same time, next place. Same time. Yeah, y'all know what I mean. Have a great night. It's been a long day. Guess y'all stay on for a few minutes. Love you all. See you all next week.